Recently I was downsizing my gear and I pulled out my Roland JX305 Groove synth. The JX305 is like an MC505 with a keyboard. I thought maybe I'd keep it as a MIDI controller, and then I thought maybe I could even use it as an external sequencer. But before testing it on external gear, I decided to try sequencing external gear with the Roland MC-303. Okay, we're going to see if we can get the much derided MC-303 Groovebox by Roland to run external hardware via MIDI sequencing. So we've got the DO5, MC101, sequential circuit Six-Trak, and a Moog Grandmother, and we're going to control some of it with an arpeggio. Here we go. We're going to turn this on somewhere. Okay, what do we have to do with this? Well, first we go to a user pattern. I've already got one set up, but I'll show you what's on it. So we've got that now. We've got to go into the system, and we want to, this is to get the arpeggio to work. We want sync 1 internal, sync 2, I have that on, I don't know if that matters. And we want midi-thru on so that we can run the arpeggio through to the other devices. All right. And we get out of that. The next important thing, each of these parts can be running the internal engine, sound engine, or external. So you've got part, let's focus here. Part 1 is MIDI channel 1. Part 2, MIDI channel 2. Part 3, MIDI channel 3. 4, same as the rest. 5, you know, carry on. Rhythm is MIDI channel 10. So we want all of these. We could sync up to 8 devices. We want them all to send their MIDI data out, not to the internal sound engine. So we have to go into the output assign. So we've got to use Shift and 14. Output assign. All right, now we are on pattern 1, external. So you may, when you turn yours on, they'll probably all be on internal. So you want to put it on external. The rhythm, again, we want it on external. Each of these, we want to have them all going to external. That's the weird LED, that means external. Okay, so we're happy with this. They're all external. Okay, so we exit that. Here's an important part. You want to save this information. Oh, by the way, you can do the tempo first. Let's do that. So I've got the tempo at 110. It defaults to 120. So I'm putting it to 110. And I'm happy with that. So back on my pattern now. What we have to do though is we need to save this And to do that, we have to, I haven't figured this out fully because the book talks about these two. Pattern set. Let's see if I can get another closer. This won't focus right. Okay. Anyway, so you need a pattern set right, PTN set W, and setup right, SETUPW. In the manual, it says setup right is for the songs, but we want to save our setup with the external to the pattern. Okay, so over here you see it's on pattern. You don't want to have it on song. You got your play mode here, so not on song, we're on pattern. Okay, leave it on pattern. And I just did both of these. That's the only thing that worked. Pattern set right, it was 14. So you have to go shift function and 14. And it says, are you sure? You do enter, yes. And then you want to go shift function 15. Setup, right? And you just go sure. Okay? So now this is going to talk to all of these other devices. Oh, okay, so we've got this set up, and what I'm doing first here is we're going to have this on rhythm part. So we're doing part select rhythm, and rhythm on this thing, and I think a lot of devices, is MIDI channel 10. So over here, these 4 channels on the MC-101 are MIDI 1, default to MIDI 1, MIDI 2, MIDI 3, MIDI 4. And so over here we're going to use, you know, we would have 1, 2, 3, and 4 would run those 4 channels. So we could sync it on MIDI 1, put a sequence on that, and have the drums over here. Drums right now are on MIDI, or on channel 1 pretty much by default. I think you can move these around, but I've set up a track where channel 1 is the drums. Okay, so in this you can do shift and utility, and you can change the MIDI channel of each of these. So I put this on channel 10 so that this rhythm and this channel 10 is going to talk. Okay, so excuse me. Yeah, so this is going to be 2 still, this will be 3, this will be 4, and this is 10. Alright, so we want to make a rhythm track. First we're going to mute the other tracks. So part mute. And we're turning off everything but the rhythm. Okay, so rhythm, you can't really tell with the flashing of this, but these are off, that's on. Okay, back to this. And we can step record. So I've got my Arteria, which wasn't plugged in. So the Arteria, you can select the MIDI channel. So I'm gonna go shift 10, that gives me middle channel 10, MIDI channel 10. And that's giving me some percussion. So I've got a, you know, bass and a kick here, and I got to go down to here, and it's the same. So bass and a kick here. So I'm gonna go step record. So I go record, press it once, and then press it again, and you can see here it's in step record. Okay, and it's showing me where I already have my bass note. So you can just manually I think this is the bass. You have to select your instrument, you have to press shift and then the key that you want. So I think that's a drum there. That part I'm not sure about. So anyway, you can add in these different, yeah, there it is. I don't know why it's not letting me just add that in. Maybe because I have to play it. So I'm gonna have that one. Oh no, there you can see where my drums are. So I can add a drum in. Okay. If you want to see the next measure, you have to go like this, and you're on measure 2, and there's where the drums are. Okay. Back. Turn that off. Okay. So that's triggering out there. And we can stop that. Fine. Now, you want to record the next part, you go on to part 2. And you can do record, you can do live recording. This sets the different lengths of the measure, count in, looping, that kind of thing. So now I'm not in step record, I'm in normal record. So I start this. And it did my count in. And now I put this on MIDI channel 2. And I can play on this or this. Okay. So you can play some notes and it will record them. Okay. So you go through each part like that, each channel, and you record each thing and it starts sending it out. Now, on some of your devices, you may have to tell it to send the MIDI through. So I'm going from this MC-303 into this, the DO5, into the Grandmother, which has a through, an actual through, and that's going out into the 6-track. Okay, now I want to show you what this can do in terms of modifying events. So it doesn't have sliders like a pitch bend or a mod, so you don't, none of these dials do that. It has limited cutoff and resonance, but those do not control the outer devices. The only thing that kind of controls it is the arpeggiator. So with the Grandmother, I've got it on channel 6. Okay, you have to read the manual on how to set this to be a MIDI channel 6. I left the sequential circuits on channel 1 because it's an old MIDI implementation. You can change the MIDI channel, but I left it on channel 1. This is channel 10 to 10, 2, 3, and 4. And this I put on channel 5. So over to this, I wanted to have a little bit of an arpeggiation. This has an arpeggiator, but I want to run it all out of this, so out of the MC-303. So I picked channel 6 and I put the arpeggiator on. And you can pick the arpeggio style by doing shift and button number 1. You have to read the manual and do all the different styles. But what I can now do is press a key here or a bunch of keys, and it's telling that. You can see it's getting this, well, you can't see, but I'll play it on when I'm doing it. It's doing a little pattern, random pattern, which is what I asked it to do on this, okay? So when you're ready, you can then record this and press record, and then you play the pattern. And it puts it into your sequence, okay? All right. Somewhere along the line, I erased my part 6, so this is an important thing. I gotta put it back in. Part 6 is the grandmother. So I've got my part select 6. I was doing an arpeggiation, random arpeggiation to get a kind of a sequence going. So I've got my arpeggiator on, and this is the important part. So I wanted my arp style. I had to go back, so I went shift number 1, and I've got my style as random, and then the next is quarter notes, okay, and then this thing. This is the, it's some kind of beat. I'm not sure what BEP stands for, but it kind of defaults to 8, I believe. 6. It defaults to 6, which is quite a fast sequence. Lots of notes. So I put it down to 3 for my sequence for kind of my Moog bass sound. Okay, so that's that. And then the other settings, I didn't mess with that one. Okay, so when you're done, you just exit, and you've got your arpeggiation. Now I have to record it again because I erased it somehow. So I press my record. Measure length is 2. Yep. This, I'm gonna put this on, this is the count in. Doesn't really matter. I'll put it on 1. And looping off, and the tone doesn't matter. So I press, I'm not in step record, I'm in real record, real time record. So I am now going to start it. Does my one little count in, and it's giving me some drums because that's already there, and I'm just gonna record my sequence. And that's it. You didn't see me holding the keys down, but I got my sequence back. Okay, so let's talk about playing live, track 5. So you can run your sequence, but you can play other channels live over it. So I've got channel 5, that DO5, that was random, but it works out. That is, if I go down, I can do it on that if I've selected part 5, or I can do it with my Arteria MIDI channel 5. Now when I play this, I'm playing this. Now that is a terrible patch, so I'm going to change that to the one I'm using here. Space harp patch. Well, it's Program Bank 2 patch 32, and it's a space harp, so it's fine on its own. It's fun, but I'm gonna arp it. I'm gonna put an arpeggiation on it. This is already set to random, so there's something weird about this. You can record, like the grandmother I recorded on track 6, the random arpeggiation. And so now I'm on another track. I could change off of random because this is already recorded as a sequence. It's not gonna arpeggiate this. The sequence that's in here is sending out, telling it what notes to play. Okay, so I can then go shift number 1 and pick a different arpeggiation style for my current part, which is going to be part 5. So right now I'm leaving it like this. So what you can tweak, you can play your arp down here, and it's going to do its thing. And then if I had enough hands, pretend it's still playing, I can then tweak this arpeggiation. This is the accent rate. So this will give you fewer notes, kind of gives you fewer notes and more notes. What it's really doing is, this way it's putting more emphasis on just a few of the notes, and that some of the other notes are lower volume. And then the accent rate this way puts the accent on all of them, which means they kind of all play. You can basically hear every note. This way you don't hear as many of them. And then the other thing you can do with the arp is you can do the octave range. So that's function. Turn that on, it lights up. And now you've got control of the octave range. So when you're holding down your keys, you got your basic keys here, and it's gonna go up and down however many octaves. So down here it's like 1 or 2 octaves, lower octaves. As you go up, it adds in more and they go higher. So if you're up here, you still get some of the lower octaves, like the initial key that you press, but they can go quite high. Okay, so that's something you can tweak playing in real time. So if I start this, you guys aren't here. I'll try to edit it in so you can hear it, but I can play now. I'm playing this live. Everything else is being sequenced, but I can play this live. And you can hear that it's keeping the sync pretty well. That means it's going from this arteria through that into this, and staying totally in sync with everything. So if you just wanted to play a live part, turn the ARP off, and you could do the multi of whatever device you're sending the MIDI to. Okay, I think that's pretty good with that. Okay, so I want to show you something about restarting your pattern from the beginning. So if you can see here, there's a little dot. That means you're not at the start of the sequence. So you can use backward and forward, and well, actually you wouldn't use forward, I guess. Use backward and you get to the start, and then the little dot goes away. Okay, so I'm at the start of my sequence. There was a part that I wanted to show you when you first, let's go on a new one here. If you set up your record here on a new pat, you can see your beat time. BET is a 4/4 beat. The length, that's the number of measures. Okay, so my example is 2, but you could go to 32, which is really long. Okay, for this one, I'm not actually going to save this, so I've got my length of 4. That's my count in for recording. Looping off, so looping just puts pauses it for 1 measure after it completes its loop of however many measures you chose. So that helps data to kind of tail off properly. And that I think that's the pattern of the tone, if you were using tones from this. So I'm not using tones. Okay, so that's how you set up your patch, and then you can, don't forget to shift number 14 and shift number 15 to write this information to the pattern. Again, I don't know the difference between those two. Pattern set right in the manual says it doesn't necessarily write everything to the pattern. So I believe this is probably more about different settings for the cutoffs and envelopes and things. And this is the actual setup of where things are routed kind of deal. Anyway, well, I'm just going to get out of that because that's, you know, something about programming a sequence. It's more about looking in the manual, figuring that out. So if I stop this, yeah, okay. So it shows a small U when it's an empty patch. I reset this to the factory presets, as they call it, because I had a bunch of old presets, a bunch of old patterns that I had made many years ago, and I just wanted to clear up space for this demo. So now I'm going back to my one here. You can mute the different parts of your sequence here. So I added my 6th one in, so I've got these tracks, drums, rhythm. 1 is the 6-track, 2 is one of the channels of the MC-101, 3 is on the MC-101, 4 is on the MC-101, 5 is a live track of the DO5, so I didn't record anything, so it's not lit. 6 is the Moog, and I have an empty 7. I didn't connect another device. But you could. Okay, so I can play my sequence, and it's playing all of this. It's playing every one of these, and it all in sync, and I can even play my other sequence on the DO5. I have to choose the right track though for that. Okay, so part mute. You can mute things as it's playing by pressing the part mute, and they start flashing. So I could turn everything off. Can't really mute the part 5, but that because there's no data there. So you can bring in different parts as you want. The other thing is the MC-101. You can mess with the sliders to get the different volumes. Part mute works too. If your different devices have filters and modulation, you can control the modulation on that device and it'll change the sound. So I'm not going to do it with that. You can do it quite easily with this, with the different cutoffs and resonance. This one is a bit funny. These knobs control one effect for each track, and then there's another multi-effects that you can twiddle in real time. This one has, you can play with these in real time. And the Arteria, it should be passing it through to that one, but I don't know why it's not. And that's how you can do a live performance. I've got my MC-303 part mutes. So I've muted everything but 6. It's hard to tell with everything's flashing, but trust me, these are muted. This is active, and that's going to the Moog. So we're going to start it. And then we're going to bring in the drums. Okay, so we've got the drums coming. And we're gonna play this sequence. This is the DO5. Okay, that's coming in. the other thing is, you see I've got my D05 on channel 5. I'm playing it with this because I've got this on midi-thru. So it's taking this, and I've got this on MIDI 5. Shift key 5. It's got a little 5 there, you probably can't see it. And when I play this, it's going to my D05, which I already set up on MIDI channel 5. If I'm playing it with this with no arpeggiation, I can modulate this. You see how it's, look, it's controlling the D05 strips, and I can pitch bend. Okay, so it'll pass it through. So it's passing the CCs that this is sending through, and I guess if you have a MIDI controller where you can set up, like I have a big one that you can set up the dials to control different CCs, then you can do your performance on this. And it seems like this MC-101, MC-303 will pass through the CCs because it's obviously doing that for these, okay? If you put this on arpeggiation for your channel, I'm doing channel 5, this is on channel 5, then it doesn't pass this stuff through. You see, it's not changing it. So it's only doing the arpeggiation. Hey everybody, I wanted to show you one more thing that I forgot to show you in those other clips. So it's how to do pattern changes in a live performance. So first we're going to, I took away some of the other devices and just have these two, and I've got to go into the Groovebox here. Gonna turn it on. Important thing to remember, you've got to do the midi-thru if you're using an external keyboard into this, because it's got to send its data through to these devices. Otherwise you're stuck using this little keyboard. So to do that, it's in the system, and we got the cat in this one now. So you go Shift 16 and you go through this. You're going to leave the synchronization to internal clock, and you are going to change the through to on. It remembered it this time. Hasn't been remembering it, but if yours is off, you put it on. That's the midi-thru. Anything going in to this triggers stuff in here, but it also gets passed through to the other devices. All right, good. So if you remember, we had the user patch we made, user patch 1. You can tell by the small u is empty, and large U has some information in there, patterns and stuff, tones, but we're not using the tones of this. We're sending the sequence data, note data out to these. So I made another pattern last night in U02, and I've got U01. So we're going to start it. I'm not going to have audio on this, it's just to give you an idea of what you do. You start it, you see it's doing its sequence here, and it's flashing here when it's going to change to the next pattern. So if you're performing live and you have your current U01, and then you want to go to your next pattern, chain it together, well, while it's on U01, you dial in your next one, and that will be next, and then it will switch to it. So now it's playing UO2, and then next it will keep looping UO2 until you dial another pattern. So if you lay out your patterns in a good, U01 through 10, you can easily dial through these and do a performance. Now I'm not going to U03 because it's empty. You can also dial in, that's a Q pattern, so you can dial in different patterns as you go. There's nothing on Q that right now. I don't know if that's a U. I don't think you can save on that one. Anyway, the idea being that's how you would do a live performance with the different patterns. Now that is a bit of a pain. You can also pre-sequence these into a song. Okay, so song mode, you have to switch the play mode here. You see it's on pattern, and you switch it to song, and you get to song 1, and it's showing what the next pattern will be. On song 2, for example, the next pattern is pattern 46. So you can record this. I'm going to just do this, and it's saying, do you want to clear the song? So I'm clearing song 2, press enter, and now my current pattern is A01. So you just step through and you save all the different patterns. Now I'm doing this one-handed. You can hold down shift and the dial, and it'll do way more, like 10 at a time, so you can kind of fast forward that way. I'm just gonna do this like this, and we've got up to Q, and then we get to the U's. So I'm gonna have my first pattern be O1, and I press enter. My second one is gonna be O1. My third one, I'm gonna go to O2. My fourth one, back to O1. My fifth one, and you can add in whatever patterns that way. So now I've got 6. I've exit this, and now I've got my song, and it will just play the different patterns I've sequenced in there, starting with O1, then it's going to do O1 again, it's going to do O2, it's going back to O1, O2 is long, so it's going to go back to O1 eventually. O2 has 8 measures, O1 has 2 measures. And you can play over this, and if you have a MIDI keyboard with tweaking devices, it'll send through whatever channel you've chosen to the devices based on what channel they're set at. So that's a way of kind of having a backing track sequence to do a whole song. The other way is not in song mode, in the pattern mode, you can dial these in on the fly. That works better if you make your user patterns with longer number of measures, so that you're not trying to switch these while performing other stuff. You can have a lot of time to dial in the next one while the first one's playing. Okay, back with another test. With the 6-track, so the sequential circuit 6-track. Before I had it going through a chain of 5 devices, and it was the last in the chain. It only has MIDI out and MIDI in, and no MIDI through. So, and you can't, there's no MIDI through connector, and there's no way to change a parameter to have it MIDI through. So it wasn't really syncing that well with the sequence of this, the MC-303. And it may have been because it was at the end of a chain of, how many devices I had? I had a Moog as well, and 4 channels on this thing. So it was at the end of the chain and maybe the timing was not really working well. So I'm putting it first in the chain to see, well, it's not a chain because that doesn't have MIDI out, or, well, it has MIDI out, doesn't have MIDI through. So it's first in the chain, and let's see if the syncing is right. What I had to do, because I didn't get my mixer out, I just playing the sound of the drums on this, and the way I did that is I do shift output assign, and the rhythm is internal, so it's going to play whatever tones this thing has. And then MIDI channel 1, this 6-track is on MIDI channel 1, and that's external. Okay, and the way you're doing the output assign is shift 14. Okay, so I am now gonna exit this, and we're gonna hear a tone. I just put some audio out from this and audio out from that into my little mixer, and I've got it on mono so that they both blend and aren't panned left and right so much. Right, so we're gonna start recording on this, and we're gonna start playing this, and then I will sync those things up later. So the tuning is hilarious on this, but it's actually in pretty good sync. So let's try a different patch. A little bit of a tremolo. I'm not sure this, I need to manually tune this. Not manually, but you know, initialize the tuning. It apparently retunes every half hour on its own. Anyway, that's not bad, the sync. Let's try. That sounds pretty good. It seems to be better when it's directly from the MC-303 to the 6-track without going through other stuff first. So I do have a MIDI 5-bay MIDI divider, which would be the next test, so that this can be not at the end of a long chain, and then the more modern devices can either be linked through or separate on each channel of the 5 MIDI. And maybe I just need to shorten the chain too, I don't know. Anyway, I like that. It's syncing up pretty well. Okay, well that's not a good tone. That's a unison. Okay, should have picked some. I should have picked some tones that would be good to test this with beforehand. Nope. Those little stabs are never seem to have any problems, so that's good. Where are we at? That's not very good. Yeah. Seems to depend on the patch, and you can mess with the attack on this. I don't know if that will help much, but unison patches. It was pretty wild. Yeah. So it works. It's getting the clock okay. Different sounds seem to be more in sync. And I mean, the most impressive thing is that this device can synchronize a really old piece of hardware, one of the first, if not the first, MIDI synthesizer. Okay, so to wrap it up, it worked pretty well. It synced everything, didn't chug, didn't have any timing issues that I could hear. The Six-Trak, I think it was more about the patches and not necessarily the MC-303 sending out the sequence. So, you know, for what a lot of people consider a toy, it actually pulled through pretty well, and you know, toys can be fun. So I'm gonna keep this thing and I'm gonna mess around with more sequences.